This is a candy with over 10,000 layers. Right, so I read through your comments on that last video, and there's quite a lot of them, but this one stood out. And since they weren't the only person to ask it, I thought today, let's try and make a 1 trillion layer Dragon's Beard candy. So to recap on the recipe, we'll start with 2 cups of sugar, and to that we'll add half as much water. Get that in there. 1 tablespoon of vinegar, carefully measured. And finally about 2 tablespoons of glucose syrup, because again, corn syrup is quite hard to get here in the UK. And at this point, we need to place our thermocouple in there, because we need to reach exactly 270 degrees Fahrenheit, which for the non-Americans is 132 degrees Celsius. So while this is getting up to temperature, I thought I'd just give you a sense of scale to how big 1 trillion actually is. If we take 1 million seconds, that's around 11 days. If you take 1 billion seconds, that's around 31.5 years. But if you take 1 trillion seconds, that's 31,710 years worth of time, which is an absolutely insane number. So we're just about up to temperature. Let's pour it onto our slab here. So just like before, our sugar is nice and malleable. Let's start forming it into our first loop. We'll just close it off by pressing it together. So now let's place our first loop into our corn flour so it doesn't stick to itself. So obviously 1 becomes 2, 2 becomes 4, 8, 16, 32, 64, and we can see they're getting very small now. 128, 256, and still the most important thing at this point is you make it nice and even. 512, and now it's starting to look like hair a bit more. 1024, we've still got a long way to go before we get to 1 trillion. 2048, 4096, 8192, 16,384, and again, this is where we stopped when we're making the actual candy. 32,768, 65,536, 131,072, and it's just about starting to mat together. 262,144, 524,288, 1,048,576, 2,097,152, 4,194,304. Strangely, it's gone slightly stiffer than it was last time. Maybe it's slightly colder today. 8,388,608. 16,777,216, 33,554,432. But if we look closely, we can see the individual fibers and they're absolutely tiny. 67,108,864, 134,217,728, 268,435,456, 536,870,912. So this is what we reached last time. 1,073,741,824, 2,147,483,648. And strangely, it's become like 1 again, but all of our little individual fibers are in these pieces. 4,294,967,296. 8,589,934,592, 17,179,869,184, 34,359,738,386, 68,719,476,736, 137,438,953,472, and it doesn't really look like Dragon's Beard anymore. 274,877,906,944. I think this might end up back as one single one once we get to 1 trillion. This is crazy. 549,756,813,888. I feel like there's some Big Bang Theory going on here. The fact that we turn this into 1 trillion and it's literally about to turn back into 1. It needs to be studied by science. And finally, 1,099,511,627,776 strands. I'm genuinely impressed with what's happened with this. I have no idea. It's basically turned back into 1, but there's 1 trillion strands in there. So unbelievably, there is our 1 trillion layer Dragon's Beard candy. Let's give it a taste test and see what it's like. I can't quite taste all 1 trillion layers. It is good though. So I can't actually see any of the individual fibers with the naked eye. With that being said, let's have a look under microscope and see if we can find anything to understand a little bit better what's going on here. So taking a closer look at a cross-section of our candy, I think what we're seeing are tiny little holes that make up the remnants of our trillion strands. And the problem is, once our fibers get to a certain size, they're not going to be able to withstand the moisture in the air, and they'll just fuse together. So finally, to answer the question, can we make a trillion layer dragon's beard candy? The answer is yes, sort of. Very cool.